Thank you. Good morning. It's really a pleasure to be with you because I am a great grandma. I have grown grandchildren, and my grandchildren have children. Can you believe it? And I just celebrated my birthday. I was 90 years old. 9-0. Can you imagine that? To live that long? And I lived a long life. And my youth wasn't so good. What can I tell you? As you know, when the war broke out in 1939, the Nazis invaded Poland September 1st, 1939, and I was exactly 10 years old. I was in my 5th grade. I was happy. You know, we didn't have the luxuries that we live today. I mean, I remember I had a little brother who was 2 years younger. We all slept in one room, and we had a little kitchen that my mother used to cook. And the stove was not electric or gas, you know. We had to burn coal to make it warm, to cook on it. The world was so different. You have no ideas, children, how different, how far we came in those 75 years since the war ended. But here we are today, and I tell you my story. When I was 10 years old, I was in the 5th grade. The Nazis came, and right away we felt it, you know. There were lines for bread, and we lacked food. We couldn't buy anything. Everything went on the black market. People are very good at it. When they see a situation, if they can make money, they go for it. You're too young to understand, but this unfortunately is in human nature. So, within 6 months, they created a ghetto for us. And all of us, they gave us a very small piece of land in a very uninhabited, people didn't live there. There was no water. We had to go out for the water. The bathrooms were outside. And very poor situation. They used to have 4 or 5 people in one room because the ghetto was small and the people in it were, we had, I think, over 100,000 people came to the ghetto. And in order for us to live, we had to, we created our own government, the Jewish. We had a Jewish leader, but he dealt with the commandeer of the lodge ghetto. And our thing was that we're going to work very hard in order to live, not to be sent any place. But they closed the ghetto, and they started with the resorts, you know, like a Schneider resort, you know, we made clothing. A straw resort. From straw we made all different kinds of things. We were very productive. But the promises that we won't be sent out from the ghetto, they didn't keep the promise. They made selections every so often. Every few months we had selections. Selections means that you stand up in a group, and of course we had Jewish policemen who guided us, who were helping the Germans, because they had to. We had our own government, and we were governed by Mr. Rumkowski. And it was very difficult. They had selections. So this time they were looking for young children who were not productive, they couldn't contribute anything to the welfare of the ghetto. They were sent out. They told the mothers, this is the worst thing in life, to take away a child from their mother. They told them that they're sending him to better places, and those children went straight to the gas chambers. And this continued. Then they looked for older people. When you were 40 years old, we were already too old. If you didn't look good, and believe me, we didn't have any food. The food became very scarce, and people who didn't have money to buy in the black market, we couldn't live on this. We used to stay in line for bread, and for no reason whatsoever, they had Polish hoodlums, who lived in Poland, and they used to show, this one is a Jew, this one is a Jew, this one, they were after us. They don't deserve it. Let them go at the end of the line to get the bread. When we came to the end of the line, there was no bread left, and we were starving. Famine became common in the ghetto. People were dying of starvation all the time. We had no medications. We had nothing. I remember I had a cavity in my front tooth. I was a young kid. I was, at the time, 11 or 12 years old. I had terrible pain, and I couldn't take anything for him. I just needed to cover it. It was a cavity. And I remember I went to a dentist. She had no instruments, or she had nothing to help me with. She took the nerve out from my tooth. And I had a broken tooth when I came to America. When I was 17, I had a broken tooth. And I couldn't, and this was out of lacking medication and lacking food. And the ghetto became a horror. It was so difficult, children. You cannot imagine. When I was in my 5th grade, I was only a few months in school. I loved school. And they closed the schools for us, in the ghetto. We had no schooling. I had a teacher. You see, I had a teacher who taught us Hebrew and Yiddish. This is where I learned my alphabet. And when they closed the schools, this wonderful teacher said to us, she took a few of us students from the 5th grade, she says, come to my house, we continue our education. We were not supposed to. I remember she locked her door and she was teaching us in Hebrew, how to read Hebrew, how to read Yiddish. We learned the alphabet. I can read everything in Hebrew. The memory is so good. And you know something? 50 years later, we were a small organization from the Polish Jews here, and we supported Israeli students who couldn't afford to go to high school, so we used to give them stipends. So we said we were an organization, we raised money for those children. We also helped everybody, but this was the main thing, the children should continue their education. And when I came to that school, I met my teacher. Can you believe it? She was teaching in the school that we supported. I couldn't believe it. What a small world. No matter where you go, you always meet somebody. We all one. And that's why I don't understand there is so much hatred for one another. I beg you, kids, eliminate the word hate from your vocabulary. Don't even use it. And you know, if you hate somebody, how difficult it is for you to digest it, to have it in you. It hurts you too, because there is a sort of guilt to hate somebody. So please, don't hate anybody. If you don't get along, move on to the next person. There is always somebody that you get along better with, that you understand a little better. As you grow, you're going to change. Every few years there is a change in a person. You grow, you understand more, you know better. So going back to the ghetto, I went to the teacher, and then in order for me to live and have a ration card, which was very minimal, excuse me, I have to have a sip. I had to go to work. I was 11, 12 years old. What can a 12-year-old kid do? What an 11-year-old kid do? I had no schools anymore. And I was a runner. When they created the offices, how to run the ghetto, I was a runner. I went to this office, they sent me to this office, this. And then I discovered that I'm very good with a needle. I'd like to sew. And I went into the Schneider Resort. They put me there. And what did they do for me? They made me, when we were pressing the garments, we were doing production for the private industry in Germany. We made ladies' clothing. I remember we had a designer who made beautiful things, and we sold it to Mr. Bibov, was our commandeer. He was the one who, it was very lucrative for him. I mean, we were slave laborers, and he made a fortune on us. And he came and he examined it, that this is pretty and this is pretty, and we put it into the German stores. We were very productive. So they discovered, what can I do? I was 11, 12 years old. They asked me to do the irons when you iron the press. We didn't have presses like this 75 years ago, 80 years ago. We had to burn the coal on top of the iron to make it hot on the bottom so we can press our garments. That's what I was used to do when I was 11, 12 years old. I had terrible headaches when I used to come home, and I discovered that I can sew, so they put me to finish the clothing. And I was finishing, made bottoms and this. I was very good with the needle. And I worked in the Schneider resort every day for 10, 12 hours. And we were lucky because when the ghetto started, we remained in our own apartment. It was on the border of the ghetto and where the ghetto was closed. So we were in our own apartment. So I was lucky because my mother and father, they had to work too. And they, you know how mothers are, how loving and how supportive they are of their children. So my mother, I'm sure, went to bed hungry, and she gave me her piece of bread that she was supposed to eat. I remember it so vividly, and it becomes from bad to worse. They selected my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who was so wonderful to me. I was her oldest granddaughter, and she adored me. She thought there was nobody like me, because the first grandchild, you feel like this. When you grow and you see how important children are in your life, how much we love you, and we want the best for you, and we want you to grow, because you are the future, You are the future. You're building a new world for us. And I hope you have this foundation of goodness and kindness to one another. Please remember this. And erase hatred from your vocabulary even. Don't even think about it. Hatred is a terrible thing. So I was sewing. I'm going back to my job. And at the end of 1944, they liquidated the ghetto, because America came to help the Russians to win over, to liberate Europe. And the war was coming to an end, and they had to liquidate the ghetto. What did they do? They sent all the people from the Lodz ghetto out to Auschwitz. And we waited and we waited. My father was anticipating maybe we hide. But then you were hiding, but there was no food. If they would catch you, they would shoot you at this. We heard those terrible things that they put people to the gas chambers, but we couldn't believe it. Any good human being could not imagine that people can be so cruel and kill you for just being a race on your own, that you're Jewish. Your religion is different from yours. He wanted to eliminate the Jews from Europe, and he did a good job. He murdered 6 million people. Among them were 1.5 million Jewish children who went to their death. What did a child of 4 or 5 years, or even younger, why did they have to be killed? Is there not enough room for all of us here? We have plenty of room for everybody. This is what I went through when I was 12, 13 years old. At the age of 14, they liquidated the ghetto, and we came to Auschwitz. The cattle cars were horrible. We had a bale, to go to the bathroom, the stink, and the starvation, and the people were dying for some water. We had nothing. People were dying on the train. A trip that takes 3 3-4 hours by train to go from Lodz to Auschwitz, about 4 hours by train. They dragged us in those cattle cars for 2 days and 2 nights. We had no room to sit down. I remember my parents stood up. Everybody had to stand up because there was not enough room in the cattle cars to sit. So I remember I used to sit, my mother made me comfortable and she made me sit on the feet of her, on her foot, so I could fall asleep a little bit. I was 14 years old. We came to Auschwitz, Birkenau, and everything became so schnell. Everything was fast, get out of it. And I remember opening the doors of the cattle cars, and people were falling out. They were dead. They were dying in the cattle cars from lack of water, from lack of air. And we had to line up. Men separate, and women and children on the other side. As we were standing and listen to all those things that we were supposed to do, I remember my mother saw a neighbor, and he had his 5-year-old girl next to him, and he couldn't take her to the side of the man because there weren't any children there. He would have gotten killed right there. My mother, she was 37 years old, went out to my neighbor and said, "Don't worry, let me have the child. I will take care of her. You go back to the man." And she was holding this child by the hand. And then we were told to line up singularly. I remember my mother was first in line holding the child's hand. And then my little brother was next to her. I had a brother who was 2 years younger than I was, and he was next. And then I came. I remember Mengele standing there, and with the whip, he talked to my mother. He said to her, this little girl was blonde, my mother was dark. He saw there was no resemblance of a child to her, but he asked her, "Is this your kind?" And my mother nodded yes. She would not let go of this child's hand. He motioned her to the left. My little brother, they had no use for him. He was only 12 years old. They motioned him to the left. He looked at me, he motioned me to the right. I started to cry, no, I want to go with my mother. And out of nowhere, an inmate who was keeping order there in the selection stood in front of me, and she said to me in Polish, she spoke to me Polish, she says, "Don't you dare move." Not only did she tell me not to move, she blocked my way. I was a step away from her, and she talked to me till I saw the group on the left leave. They went straight to the gas chambers. After this, after my mother and the child and my little brother, there was an aunt with a cousin and another aunt. Nobody survived. I was the only one to survive. They put me to the right. I went to the right, and they shaved my head, and I took all my clothes out. Everything I left there, whatever I had, all the clothes were left on, and they gave me one party dress. Yeah, first they disinfected us. They didn't give us any showers or anything. They put powder on us, like we do with animals sometimes. When they have fleas, you put some powder on them. I think they even treat them better now with something else to clean them from the fleas, but at the time, they put some powder over us to disinfect us, And they gave us one garment, no underwear, nothing. I remember getting a party dress, which was I remember it was pink. It was about 3 sizes too big. It was for a grown person. I was 14 years old. And They gave me a pair of shoes with high heels. I couldn't walk in those shoes and sail uphill standing there for hours. I was always barefoot. I remember one morning on the sail uphill, my feet froze to the ground because this was already September. September in Europe is cold. Eastern Europe is cold in September. And I got blisters on my feet. I survived this. And from Auschwitz, I was in Auschwitz 6 weeks. I was sent to Bergen-Belsen. My pain for my mother was hurting all the time, but people were nice to one another. We encouraged each other. We had, I remember somebody maybe I was 14, she had a little sister my age, and she come, be with us. She wanted to take care of me because she knew that I was alone. The little sister was so unhappy. She thought that I'm taking something away from her sister, so she was jealous. She didn't want her sister to take care of me. So she was she probably, the poor child was my age, and she couldn't deal with everything that was going on. So I remember she went with another group and I went someplace else. I was sent to Bergen-Belsen in the beginning of, this was September, October. In November, we came to Bergen-Belsen. All the barracks were filled. We had no room where to stay. So you know what they did? They put up tents on the snow and ice. They had some bricks or something that we had a little space to stay. And this is how we lived, with tents where the snow was outside and ice, and we lived in tents. We were freezing to death. I remember we got some blankets. I remember my feet were so hurting, I had blisters and I was so cold. And I tore away a piece of blanket that I was given to cover my legs. And I got such a beating from the soldier who was watching us, the Wehrmacht, whatever they called them, that I ruined, how dare I ruin German property. What he is, what the Führer, what he put into those minds of those people, to put a piece of blanket in my feet to cover my blisters. This is ruining German property. This is a piece of blanket. This is what I had a beating for it. And we stayed in those conditions. Another Hungarian woman took care of me. She saw how young I was. By then I switched, I was already 15. She saw that I was alone. She says, let's be together. She was rubbing my back for the warmth, and I was doing the same, and we were cuddling. And we went to sleep, and we covered ourselves to get a few hours of sleep because we used to. They woke us up 5 o'clock in the morning for sailor pill, which was so ridiculous, just torture. And in the morning when I got up, when we were to go to the sailor pearl, she was dead next to me. She died while we were holding on to each other. I was holding on to a dead woman. This woman is still in the front of me. Wherever I go, whatever I see her. She used to read my palm. And she said, you'll survive. You'll have a good life. You'll have 2 loves in your life. You'll have a good life. You'll survive. And in the morning I got up, she was dead next to me. I went out to the sailor pearl, and apparently they got rid of her body. From Bergen-Belsen, we were sent to Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic. And this was already a little better because we had places in a building. We had no straw mattresses, nothing. We stayed on the bare floor, but at least we weren't on snow and ice, we were indoors. And I was there, we went to ammunition factories, we worked day and night. I remember once when I was standing at the machine, doing something. I don't even remember what I remember, but I can't find a word for it. I was making something smaller. I was with something in my hand doing. And the Aufseherin, who was watching over us, called me. And she said, I have some soup left. Please eat it. A German Aufseherin gave me some soup. And I remember bringing out the soup to the people that I worked with, and each of us had a few spoons. I couldn't eat it myself. I know the starvation was so great that I shared it with the people that I worked with. A few people were around me. You know, I never spoke about it. It's you that brings out this thing in me that I want to say everything I remember. And it's you children, you young students. I want you to make a better world and see how cruel this is, what we went through. There is not many of us left, because at this age, you know, we get dementia, our mind doesn't work so well, we forget things. I'm lucky. Apparently it's meant for me to be the way I am, so I can give the message to you to have a better world. You're building the future for us. So, this was Czechoslovakia. And as the arms, Poland was already liberated with Americans and Russian soldiers. The Germans were losing the war. So they took us on a dead march. The dead march, we were skeletons in rags. This is how I can describe the group where I was with. They took us only to the small spots. People used to come up and wonder who we are. We didn't resemble any human being. So they dragged us. And if something was wrong, if you couldn't walk the way they wanted, you were shot at the spot. This went out for a few weeks. And I was a group with 4 other girls. Most of them, I think I was the youngest among them, because there was one a little older, she was 20, and then was 18. I was 15 at the time. And we were all, the 5 of us were together. When we were lucky at the Dead March, some farmers gave us the barn to sleep in. So this was good, because we used to go up to the high loft. On the bottom we had the cows, the pigs, whatever there was on the farm. And we went to the high loft where they keep the food for the animals. And it was good for us because it was warm at least. And one day we decided that we are not going to go down when they call us the next morning. We wanted to die. We wanted to be, we had no food. We had nothing. We used to eat the snow outside for water. This is how horrible, this is how torturous it was. So we decided that next time if we sleep on the barn, we won't come down when they call to move on the next morning. And we heard the group assemble and go further, and we stayed there. We didn't move. When it got all quiet, we came down. The farmer was shocked. He was afraid, apparently. And we asked, where's the group? We overslept, which was a lie. He told them that we overslept, and we wanted to know where the group went, which way. So he showed us a road this way, and we should leave, that he was afraid. And we started then, this very moment, we started to identify as Polish citizens, as Polish girls walking in concentration camp. So we started walking. When we were out of sight from this farmer, where he told us to go to the right, let's assume, when we were out of his sight, we took a different route. And as we were walking in those rags, and I remember, coming to a place, I never said it to anybody, but you all Germans, I want you to feel a little better. I remember encounter German soldiers who ran away from the army, and they were eating. I remember one of the soldiers reached out and gave me a piece of bread. You see, there is goods. This German soldier fought against us, but when he saw us, he gave us a piece of bread. I'll never forget it. I remember the outlay, the layout of the group. There were maybe 4 soldiers. They still had their uniforms on, but they were disarmed. They didn't have any. And we told them that we are Polish girls. We didn't say, we didn't mention the word Jews. No, we were not Jews anymore. We were Polish girls, that we were in a camp. And where to go. So we saw signs to go to villages in Czechoslovakia. We came to Czechoslovakia, and those people took us in. First we stayed in the barn, and they also were farmers. It was a small village. And they gave us clean clothes. You have to excuse me, but we were full of lies. And they gave us clean clothes. And little by little they gave us food. The food didn't agree with us. We couldn't have, when you starved, I weighed maybe 70 pounds. When you're starving like this, your stomach is not used to food anymore. And they used to give us the milk. They wanted us to get better, so they thought milk is good for us. We had diarrhea, all of us. It took a few days. We got better, because this is, when you're young, you recuperate much faster than when you get older. That's the fact of life. And each one family took us in. We didn't identify as Jewish. We told them that the same thing, that we Polish girls, we were in a concentration camp. And each family took one of us in. I came in with a family who had a daughter maybe a few years older than I was. Lovely, lovely people. This was 1945. They had no electricity. This is how we lived in Europe 80 years ago. I want you to know how lucky we are with all the things we have today. Maybe it's a little too much. I think too much of anything is no good. Remember, they had no electricity. They had one big room, a fireplace. The house consisted of 2 rooms. One was a bedroom for the parents, and then was a living room where we ate and they cooked there, everything. They had a fireplace there, which warmed up the whole little house. I remember the first night I slept there, they put me next to the fireplace, and they put a straw mattress for me, and they covered me. I never forget that night. I said, my God, there is still some humanity among us. And I stayed with them. And then the Russians came. They liberated this little village. And they kept us safe. They said, don't go out, don't meet any soldiers. You know, they came from the front, you were all young kids. We wanted you to be safe, stay in. And we listened, you know. And then they retreated, the Russians retreated, the zoning changed, and the American army came. You have no idea how wonderful American people are. I remember those soldiers, they let us come out and speak to them. We didn't know any English. So I was the one who said, is anybody of you Jewish? Maybe anybody can speak Yiddish, because I spoke Yiddish. And of course there were a few Jewish soldiers among the Americans. They were wonderful. They brought us hope. And the war was over. They told us the war is over, but we shouldn't go back to Poland because there is still a lot of anti-Semitism there. The Polish people who took everything when we left for the ghetto, when we left our places in the city, and we left to the ghetto. Those people took their apartments. And I think that they were afraid that if we come back, we want the apartments back to give to them. So they said, don't go back to Poland. Try to go any place. Try to go to America. And America, where's America? I didn't even finish my 5th grade What did I know about America? But we, of course, they were very friendly to us, and we were very happy to see that the war is over. And they told us not to go back to Poland, but we didn't listen. We went back. We wanted to see, we were hoping that our parents that they survive, that we find them in Poland. And it took us weeks to get back to Lodz. I came to Lodz because the trains weren't running. I remember taking rides in horse and buggies. If people were nice, so they used to take us to this station, to this. We had not a penny. We only had the garments that we had on us. But we wanted to go home and look for our parents, look for somebody who was left. The war was over, by the way. And we came to Lodz, and there was a Jewish community there already, because they were liberated the end of January. This was already May. The war ended in May, so this was the end of May. And I found out that my uncle survived. He had lost his wife and 2 children, but he survived. He was in a camp in Poland, and they were liberated a little earlier. They worked very hard, but he survived. So of course he took me in. He had already a second wife, because people are lonely, people need each other. So he met somebody, he knew that his wife died with the children. And I stayed there. And then we had to leave Poland. In order to immigrate any place, we had to go to Germany. Only in Germany you could choose a country that you want to go to. And we could register someplace. We could not go. We wanted to go to Palestine to build a little place for the Jewish people so a Jewish soldier can protect us. We wanted it very much, but we couldn't. They wouldn't take any survivors in. We couldn't. Yes. At the time went by very fast, and we were, looking out for each other. We were in a DP camp. Somebody here is from Frankfurt. I was between Frankfurt and Mannheim. There was a little town, Lampertheim. And it's a small world, because this gentleman who was in Lampertheim became the president of the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington. It's so, life is so mysterious, that people get together from nowhere, and they come and yet they know each other. They have something in common. We just have to look for the goodness in us and to give it to other people, because each one of us has a good spot in their lives. We just have to know how to use it and respect and love each other. This is the only way to live, children. So I was in this DP camp, and by then I already had a boyfriend. I was 17. And my boyfriend had papers, an affidavit to go to America. They had relatives here, and he was so bright. He was 8 years older than I was. He finished gymnasium in Krakow, Poland. He was in the same gymnasium that we had the famous Polish Pope. What was it, Pope John? Was it Pope John, the Polish guy? He was in the same school. Pope John was ahead of him 1 year. He was in the same high school with Pope John. By the way, he had many Jewish friends, Pope John. And my boyfriend is going away. We knew that we cared for each other, that we wanted a life together. He says, Esther, by the way, my name was Astusha in Polish. I took my name Esther here when I came to this country because Astusha is a Polish name. I wanted to be cosmopolitan in Poland. When my friends asked me, do you speak Polish at home or you speak Yiddish? I lied to them. I wanted to be cosmopolitan, to be a good citizen of Poland. I said, of course I speak only Polish, which was a lie. I think this is the only time in my life that I lied to my friends. I told him that I speak Polish, which was not true. I was brought up in a Jewish home, and we only spoke Yiddish. Now it's coming in handy. Everybody wants to learn Jewish, but it's a dead language. So he's had an idea. He says, you know something? Let's go to the American Council in Frankfurt and see maybe he can do something for us. We came to the American consulate. I just want to show the children how wonderful America is, how it was 80 years ago, and 75 years ago. I lost count already. We came there. We wanted to speak to the Consul General of America. We wanted to tell him that my husband was to leave this was in November. My boyfriend was to leave to America in December, the end of December, and I was not registered any place. We had an interpreter, and I remember the Consul General came in, and the interpreter told him why we're here, that the situation is my boyfriend is leaving for America, and I'm not registered. He looked at me, this American consul, and he said to me, of course, through interpretation, I didn't know what he was saying, but the interpreter was there. He told me, oh, you like to go to America? You'll be very happy here. We love to have you in America. This was my introduction to America. We love to have you. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving. We're going to have a big celebration. We give thanks to the wonderful thing we live in America. How old are you? I said, I'm 17. I have a quota up to 18. You're going to leave to America within a few weeks because you're only 17. And I have a quota and I still have space for you. You're going to go in a few weeks. You're going to be in America. He kept his word. He encouraged me. Within a few weeks, I got my certificate to go to Bremerhaven and wait for my ship, Marine Perch. It wasn't a Marine, a Queen Mary ship, believe me. It was terrible, but a lot of survivors came on this ship. Marine Perch, I was in Bremerhaven, waited. I arrived in America. It was a good omen for me because I'm a very affectionate and I'm a very romantic person. I came here Valentine's Day, February, on Valentine's Day, 1947. I was with a youth group in the Bronx. My boyfriend, of course, came to the ship. He bought me a big box of chocolate, the Loft. Remember the Hearts? Loft, maybe you don't remember because you're new here. And he put it between his coat. And I remember he wanted to see me better because I was on the ship waving to him. And the box of chocolate fell into the water. And I don't think he had any money to buy me another one. But so, of course, we met, and I was with the youth group in the Bronx, I remember. They took me shopping. This was the middle of February, the end of February. And I got some clothes. And then my boyfriend decided that I should move in. He survived with 4 sisters and a brother, which was very unusual. How they did it, I don't know. It's a miracle, too. We live by miracles, So he says, you go and live with my sisters. I don't want you to be in the youth group. And I came to the sisters, and I went to work right away. I knew how to sew. And I saw an advertising for Henry Bendel. It's a very famous, it's like even bigger than Bloomingdale's because it was a small place and they only used to make beautiful clothes for private customers. And I saw an ad and they told me that they're looking for somebody who knows how to sew. So I went there. I just didn't think of anything. I mean, if they need it, I'll do it. And they took me. Everybody in America was wonderful to me. I never had any. I got a job there. I worked there, and then I became a member of Dubinsky's union, we had a very big industry there. We did a lot of things here. Everything today is from China, but we used to do everything in America. And I had a job there. And at the age of 18, this was February, November 8, 1947, I was married to my husband, to my boyfriend. And we had 51 wonderful years together. We did a lot. He was a guy with a very heavy accent from Poland. He became an aide to a congressman. He was so bright. He was so good. I remember coming to Israel the first time. The guy who registered us, said to my husband, "Oh, those pens! We don't have anything like this in Israel. They were a young country. It was." He says, "Where do you buy those pens? It's so hot here, and we can't find a garment like this." My husband said to me, "Wait 1 minute, I'll be right down. He went upstairs, changed his clothes, took off his pants, brought it down to the guy. He says, "We are the same size. This will fit you fine." He took off his pants and gave it to this guy because he admired this for the that it would be much comfortable in this hot weather. This was my husband. He did so much. We were on committees with Elie Wiesel to build a museum in Washington, D.C. And we had a Temple Emmanuel gave us we were very involved. Very few of us are left. I see people that I looked at the albums that I have from the 70s and 80s. So many people, everybody died out. Really, it's so sad, but we did a lot for this country. We brought back the Hebrew schools. I remember my husband worked a whole summer to prepare my son to go to Hebrew day school. This was in Hempstead, in Long Island. And he worked there a whole summer we got this, it was a dilapidated little building. So somebody gave it to us, to a group of people. We wanted to build a school. And I remember he worked with other people. Rabbi Luxstein, who's very famous from Ramah School, we were very friendly with his sister. Her husband and my husband used to paint and to prepare the children to start a Hebrew day school. Of course, they had all the curriculum of the English studies, but we also had the Hebrew. So we did this for the children. We brought back the Hebrew schools. And we were very good. We dedicated a lot of goodness into this country, really. We brought a lot of it good. I see people now accuse the new immigrants that they come and they only want things from the country, but it's not so. We contribute. We were so grateful that we had the freedom, that we were human beings again, that we can do this for one another. We had a wonderful 60s, 70s. We had a wonderful life here. My husband, with his audacity, didn't know any English, and he opened a printing. How do you take this? He says, "I was born into a printing place, and I will make it." He knew. He was very, very bright. He knew everything. Whatever he saw, he could fix. Whatever was broken, he fixed. He was brilliant.
Esther, I'm looking a little bit on the time. Would it okay for you if the students now have the time to ask you questions?
Okay. So, listen, I lived happily ever after with my husband. We have 3 wonderful children. They all very, very, very well educated. My older son is an attorney. My middle son settled in Israel. He made Aliyah. He said, "We have a little Israel. I want to help." And my daughter is a supervising nurse, pediatric nurse in Cornell Medical Center. So they had a fine education, and I'm very proud of them. Now they have already grandchildren. My children have grandchildren. So I had a wonderful life, and I love this country with all my heart. This is my home. I love Israel, but it's a different love. This is my home. I am in Israel for 8-10 days, and I want to come back. this is how grateful I am to be a citizen of this country. So I thank you for listening.